All right. So at this point, you had about 5 minutes to look at the assignment over here. Hopefully you found all the pesky errors, not just the typos, because I'm sure at this point, everybody's found the typo on, for example, line 6. And everybody's found the scarier, much harder to find typo on line 12. And if you haven't, make sure to put these errors into your debug journal so that you know to look for them later. But there are more serious errors here, aren't there? Can anybody tell me what is the problem with line 4? Speak up. Anybody else?
There's no main function.
There is
there's
no
no
main
main method.
function. That's
There's no
right.
main method, I'm sorry.
That's right. Without a main method, our JVM doesn't know where to start. It just sees a whole bunch of cool options, but no way to get in. Great job. Hopefully you went to line 4 and changed greet to main. Now there's also a pretty serious error in the first line. We're using a scanner. What does that mean for us?
You haven't imported anything.
We
So
have
you can
to,
use
that's right. We have to import our library because scanner is not one of those things that's automatically opened up. We have to make sure to add an import statement at line 1. Now, the peskiest error, the one that's not a typo and the one the compiler will never find, is in line 16. Did anybody find the error in line 16? That's a tough one. Notice on line 16, our chatter, our greeter, is saying, hey, I am presumably so many years old. But is age the right variable to use here? No. What's the variable that we actually meant to use? Well, that has to be this one up here, isn't it? My age. This is another reminder for all of you to use really good variable names, because it's so easy in a larger piece of code to forget what goes where, especially if you have like num1 and num15 and string2, right? We want to make sure that our variable names are easy to remember, easy to understand, very obvious. So it might make sense if you were continuing to work in this code to change this declaration on line 13 to be something like input age or other age or partner age or something else to indicate this is definitely not my age. All right, if you have more questions about the debugging, let's speak later. But for now, I'm looking around and I see some of you are wearing sweaters and others are not. If you want to quickly switch to the teacher side, I have my workspace open. And what I'm going to do at this point is open notes, which is basically my lesson plan. Just something easy for me to refer to. Back to the student side. All right, so I see some of you are wearing sweaters and some of you are not. How did you decide whether or not to put a sweater in the morning? Speak up, don't make me call on people, you know I will. I have a very sleepy class today.
We checked the weather, right?
You check the weather. That's exactly right. So you went to whatever way you check the weather. Maybe you have a thermometer hanging outside. Maybe you went to an application you like, and you looked at the weather. Now, I'm assuming by weather, small assumption, you mean temperature. And what did you think to yourself? You thought, is it cold? And that's how we think, really, isn't it? We're going to say, if it's cold, I'm going to wear a sweater. That's a decision. You just made a decision. Congratulations. And computers have to make decisions all the time, don't they? Are you allowed to view this content? Are you not allowed to view this content? Are you seeing a brighter picture or a darker picture? Are we playing? Are we stopping? Millions of decisions every minute. So how do we make a decision in Java? Well, if you take a look at the slides, this is the syntax for a Java if statement. This is how we make decisions in Java. We're going to say if some condition, something we need to think about, do some stuff. So what does it mean? Let's quantify this. What does it mean to be cold? Joey, did we ever get your microphone figured out? No? Oh, so I can't call on you. You're off the hook. Somebody help me out. What does it mean to be cold?
Probably a lower temperature of some sort.
Lower temperature of some sort. And that's very individual, isn't it? Now, I'm originally from Russia, but I've been in California for 20 some years. So for me, cold is anything under 70 degrees. And that's what I'm going to write. That's going to be my condition. I'm going to say if, let's assume we have a temperature is less than 70. And then I'm going to take a peek at my syntax and see, oh, I need some parentheses. Let's add some parentheses. And then my squigglies. And what does it mean to wear a sweater? Well, for now, because we don't have a special object set up or anything else, let's just make a print statement.
Hello?
I can hear somebody.
Hey, that's me.
Yay! Welcome to the speaking group. Now I can pick on you. All right. So at this point, I want you to make sure to open your workspace again if you close it. And in your files, please find morning.java. I'm going to open it up in presentation. Scan the file. You should see nothing surprising. Right? We're seeing some basic conversations. We're getting a temperature from the input. Now, to run this file, don't forget, we need to use the drop down, not just click on run, but use the drop down to select which file we want to run. If I run morning.java right now, down here in the console, it's going to ask me, what's the temperature outside? Well, it's not great. It's like 60. I know, not great California style. Well, you say it's 60. At this point, we don't know what to do unless we have this decision statement here. Ooh, that's the wrong one. I didn't say equals. I said less than. Let's try this again. Run morning.java. All right, still, what did I say, 60 degrees? You say it's 60, grab a sweater. What happened? Well, because the temperature was less than 70, we made a decision. We said, let's go grab a sweater. So far, so good? 70 is good for me, may not be good for you. So in your own morning.java, right around line 12, go ahead and add the code to check. Is it cold? And if it's cold, tell yourself to grab a sweater. I'm going to give you 2 minutes because this is easy peasy, just typing exactly, more or less, what we said. Very quickly, if you want to switch to the teacher side, at this point, I'm opening my student workspaces. And I'm going to click through and look at what people are doing to make sure everybody's in the right place, everybody's doing the right thing. I see somebody may be a Python programmer. I've been making this mistake all month long as I'm playing with Python. Somebody forgot a semicolon. I could let them know that that semicolon is needed before they get frustrated. Yep. Oh, we have another equals here. I'm going to have to mention that. And as the 2 minutes pass, I'm going to close that, go back to my workspace, go back to presentation. All right. Now, what if this wasn't October? What if we were in May and the question wasn't about sweaters? Our question was about sunscreen. Well, we wouldn't be checking if it's too cold, would we? We would need to use a different comparison operator. And we have a whole set of them. If you take a look at the syntax slides, you'll see we have our less than or equal to. We can't just throw a line under the sign like we would in algebra. So we do them sequentially, less than, equal to. We have our greater and greater than equal to. And then the big red arrow, notice this one, this is important. Remember, because we use the equal sign as the assignment operator, that's what we use to put values in variable boxes. We can't use it for comparison. So to check that something is equal to, that's the magic phrase, we use two equal signs. That is the symbol for is equal to. And that is the phrase we're going to use from now until May and forever and ever, amen. That's not an equals, that is equal to. And of course, its companion, I suspect most of you haven't done Boolean logic, but that is the not equal to. That's not excitement, yay, it's equal. That's a not equal to. So here's your next challenge. Under your sweater check, write another if statement, checking to see if you're likely to need sunscreen. I'm going to give you 5 minutes for this one. And if you have any difficulties, turn to your partner before you ask me. Because of course we want our students to see each other's code. If you are looking at the teacher side, I'm doing something that I absolutely love to do. This little omnipotent, omniscient hovering. Somebody's doing something I like. I'm going to drop in a comment. And hopefully, whoever is working under the name Made Indira should see a nice little comment in their code encouraging them to continue doing whatever they're doing right. Oh, I see there's a problem here. I'm going to drop a comment straight up here. And even run it for them. Ooh, somebody clearly knows what they're doing. Yes, we can do all sorts of clever things with string input, but that's neither here nor there.
Do you
All
have,
right.
do you have the conferencing just because you're presenting?
Sorry?
Do you have the conferencing just because you're presenting?
I like the conferencing for the slides. I think that is just a really convenient way to get that information to the students. I have my slides set up in a Google presentation in a different window, and I just use the share option that I have to project these to students' computers instead of fighting the overhead situation, which is, in my experience, never a guaranteed win. And, you know, God forbid we go remote, this is where my face would be.
My question is that to look at the others I thought you were on conferencing to look at the other desktops.
No. So this is something that obviously you as students do not have the access to because we do want to avoid plagiarizing as much as possible. As a teacher, I have another tab. If you want to look at the Zoom teacher view, I have an option over here to look at student workspaces.
Okay.
And that's where I'm looking.
That makes sense. This is my first time I've ever seen it. So
Welcome to the cool zone. This honestly, like my back is not killing me because I'm not hunched over people's backs all the time. This alone has been a game changer for me. But let's get back to the lesson. So at this point, 5 minutes has passed. Everybody has succeeded. I'm very happy. I dropped some notes. I dropped some comments. I helped some people. People helped each other. Everything's hunky-dory, right? And this is where we're going to switch to teacher and go on. All right. So it looks like we can do a lot of decisions based on numbers. But you guys already know that numbers are not the only fun thing in Java we can play with. We've spent some time playing with strings, haven't we? Now, what are the two methods that you know for comparing strings? Well, at this point, we've talked about the dot equals method and dot compare to. Let's see about the second half of our morning. The second half of our morning says, well, what is it's going to rain? What are we going to do then? Using the dot equals as our condition, we can check if it's going to rain, bring an umbrella. Now, as you know, anytime you're getting input from the user, you have to trust them to do the right thing for now. We are going to talk about how to deal with untrustworthy users, but for now, let's just assume that whoever is using this morning program to prepare for their day is going to do the right thing. So I am going to make sure I have enough squigglies because I had to delete some code and run morning.java. It is 80 degrees outside, so I don't have to worry about a sweater, but is it supposed to rain? I'm going to say yes. And when I say yes, my code tells me, bring an umbrella. Go ahead and try this out in your own code, but check for no, just for fun. Have your program tell you, no, you don't need an umbrella. All right, looks like everybody's got it. Fantastic. Now, at this point, if you decide to go home in the middle of class, you are prepared to do the first of tonight's two homeworks. I am very quickly going to switch you guys over as teachers to look at what the homework would look like in this situation. So this is basically what our students would see for their first assignment. It would be asking them to take the greeter program, and I will have provided the cleaned up greeter in the template, and asking them to respond to what's your name, respond to how old you are with something interesting, and do a third Q&A little setup. And of course, If I was using this particular assignment, I would already have my autograder set up so that when they submit, if they didn't do it right, they will know to continue working without me having to, check my email at 9 o'clock at night, which I do anyway. But all right, so the first assignment for next class is to complete the chatty greeter number 1, to add some things to it to make it more interactive. But let me ask you this. What if you wanted your program to say something for yes and for no? Well, you could, of course, add a second statement. You guys already have the no, I have the yes. We could add a mirror statement, right? If your answer is no, don't bring an umbrella. But think of how inefficient that would be, right? If we do decide to perform the statement at line 21, we know it's going to rain. So there's no point in checking the condition in line 23. That just doesn't make any sense. So of course, we can use a different statement to make that work. You and I, when we think about things, we tend to use the word otherwise, right? If it's cold, I'm gonna grab a sweater, otherwise I won't. The Java for otherwise is else. And I want you to take a quick, careful look at the syntax slide, okay? In general, the if and the else look very similar, but there's a serious big difference. I need someone to tell me what is the structural difference between the if statement and the else statement.
No chance for parameters?
No parameters, no condition. That's exactly right. Because else doesn't care what's going on. Else is our default. Else is our fall through. Else is our backup. Else is what's going to happen if nothing else does. So you don't get to check for anything. Instead, if we get back to our rainy day, we're going to say, if the answer is yes, then bring an umbrella. Otherwise, don't bring an umbrella. We don't have to be doing any checking. We don't have to look at any variables, no conditions. Else is our otherwise. So take a minute and add an else clause to your temperature checks. Have a grab a sweater and don't grab a sweater scenario. And if you finish that quickly, add the else clause to your sunscreen situation as well. Let's practice that. Make sure we put all the squigglies in the right places. And make sure to test every option. Now we have a lot of different ways the program can execute. All right, looking good. And at this point, you are all ready to complete the second assignment of the day. And that is to make your chatty greeter even more interactive. You're going to start with your answer to assignment 1. You have to do that one first. And then add the else clauses to all of these conversations. So for the second assignment, you have to have 3 little Q&A interactions And for each of the answers you receive, you must have at least 2 possible answers. For example, I'm older than you, I'm younger than you. But speaking of older and younger, those are not the only 2 possibilities, are there? We could also meet somebody who is exactly our age. And there is a way to do this in Java as well. We could, again, have sequential if statements, but that's not efficient. And sometimes we do have a 3-way split, even a 4-way split, you know, somebody likes red, somebody likes yellow, somebody likes green, somebody likes blue. So for those situations, we have one final set of syntax. And that is, we can nest these, we can kind of Lego these things together, one after the other. We can have, always we start with an if. If that decision is not made, if our condition is not met, we could check for a different condition. And I'm sure you can guess, we could continue with as many else ifs as we have space for. Generally, it's not a great idea to have more than 3 or 4. There are exceptions. There's always an exception. But the rule of thumb is you shouldn't have more than 4 or 5. Otherwise, your code becomes hard to read. And we're going to see other ways of doing this. But for now, for practice, let's go back to our morning. You can go to morning if or morning if else if you'd like. But let's go back to our morning setup one last time. And let's see, how do we say, grab a sweater, don't grab a sweater, and option number 3, the weather is perfect. So I'm going to start over here on my line 12 in morning.java. If the temperature is less than 70, grab a sweater. Else, if my temperature is greater than 70, did I say I'm from Russia? I burn when it rains. 70, that's already sunny enough. System.out.print line, bring some sunscreen. And let's not forget the semicolon. And then my fall through, my default. What is going to happen if neither of these conditions is true? Well, if it's not less than 70 and it's not greater than 70, and we assume our input is valid, that the answer to what's the temperature wasn't banana, then it must be 70 degrees outside. And I'm going to say, what a perfect day. And now, when we're testing this code, we have to run it at least 3 times, don't we? We have to test it with something like 75. We have to test it with something like 50. And we have to test it with 70 exactly, just to make sure that each of these branches is done just right, that we can make a decision, we can make a follow-up decision, and we have a fall through backup option if none of these work out. So at this point, we have about 15 minutes left. If you want to discuss any of your code, let me know in the chat. Otherwise, I invite you to go get started on your homework. The more you do here, the less you have to do at home. And if you need any help, drop the link to your workspace into my chat so that I can come and visit. Otherwise, as teachers, we're going to wrap this up in terms of the lesson, because I'm sure you don't care for the assignments. If anybody is interested in seeing my actual lesson plan, I'm happy to send that to you. I think the easiest way to do that is for you to send me an email, Svetlana@codingrooms.com. Some of the emails you received in the last couple of days should have come from me, so you should have that already. And if you have any other questions, let's talk. What do you want to know? How do you teach conditionals? What have you stumbled over? I really, perhaps because I spent many years in an all-girls school, I don't know if people saw that discussion today on Facebook. I found that these kinds of stories, tying even the simplest, most basic exercise to real life, really help students follow along. So every time I'm introducing something new, I'm going to tie this to something they did today, hopefully, or at least this week. So if we're making decisions, we're making decisions about, the temperature. That seems neutral enough. That's kind of how I do it.
Well, this was really good. And this is just my first exposure. Is there a video or something online that goes through how to actually use this in all of this?
So on the Coding Room's YouTube channel, there are a whole bunch of videos that we've been recording, mostly from these kind of webinars that we've been doing. There's some on, the basic introduction. Joe did one. I don't remember the exact date, but it was a couple of weeks ago. So the most recent video, if you check today, will be Joe's webinar that basically walks you through creating a class, creating assignments, running a live classroom. And then my friend John, in a couple of weeks on November 3rd, is going to tell you how to set up auto grading, which is, like I said, it's a tremendous time saver because I like to check up on my students, but I don't like having to do it all the time. So for these simple assignments, it's always nice to have them see, you got it or you forgot something. And then we're going to continue doing these. Like I said in the email, if you want to see something discussed, let us know. If you haven't filled out the survey, you can email me, you can go back to the survey. I think the only request I've seen so far that was, immediately viable was to talk about teaching functions and variables. And if there's enough interest to that, I was thinking of doing a little thing on iteration in November, but whatever you guys want to see, we'll do some of that.
And we can do different languages too. So if you have any requests for like Python or Java or JavaScript, or, Coding Rooms does just about any language you can think of. And we have people on staff that are familiar with most of them. So
I had a request for Haskell. I'm not sure if we have an expert in that yet. We might need to branch out a little bit. But until we get, a significant number of people requesting it, that's probably not going to happen in the next month or so. All right. If you guys have questions, yeah?
I thought I might ask kind of a general question. So in traditional class setting, you usually have the advantage of, say, when a student's getting caught up on something fairly low level, like syntax issues or something like that, you have the benefit of maybe just kneeling down at their workstation and stuff and kind of helping them through that. Do you have any thoughts on conducting it in this kind of remote setting where you don't necessarily have to talk openly to everyone in the classroom?
Right. So I actually would use Coding Rooms live, not remote, precisely because I don't like bending over somebody's code, in part because it's back from my back and from my eyes, and in bigger part because if I am here, especially in the younger classes, I don't know what's going on over there. And I don't like that at all, right? No matter what blocking the school has, they're gonna go and do something they shouldn't, right? So this is why I would absolutely, that kneeling down, I would do this using those student workspaces, right? One of the nicer things that I didn't have a chance to show is that on that student roster, when somebody's code doesn't compile, a little red light shows up. So for somebody who is getting hung up on syntax, I would see that right away and I can pop in, hopefully identify the issue quickly, unless it's print no, which I keep messing up after 20 years. And yeah, either comment or make a suggestion, or depending on the student, I would maybe even change it myself to make sure they don't get frustrated, they don't get aggravated.
Okay, Gotcha.
Yeah.
I think there's the additional value in, those students that might get a little embarrassed that the teacher's leaning over their code.
Yeah, that
So
too.
with this, you have the advantage that you can help them without them feeling they're singled out or people are looking at them.
Yeah. So we had a 3-year sequence, and definitely the first year, I had to be very careful with, singling people out, how I talk to them, because the self-esteems were just not there. Right. By the 3rd year, I can open up my ID. I can trust them to hand me a clean USB, all of that stuff. But first year, everybody's so cautious, especially the first couple of units. Half of them are wondering what they're doing here. Half of them are like, "Ooh, does this mean I can like mine Bitcoin? And can I go try it now?" And so yeah, the ability, this kind of omniscience and omnipresence is very appealing to me. All right, I'm gonna hang around because I promised to be here until 6:30. If you come up with other questions, please ask. If you registered or if you have a coding room account, you should be able to go back to the live classroom after I have left. It will be, I believe, it will be available so that you can go and look. There are a whole bunch of other files that I have in there. I have a morning with an if, I have a morning with an if and an else. And like I said, if you want to see my lesson plan, I think it's the only page that I have nicely formatted for you guys. Let me know. But as you can see, just very straightforward. I have some syntax, I have a story, and we're just going to keep working that story until repeat, things sink in.